Deep within the Arctic Circle, shrouded in perpetual winter, lies a prison unlike any other. This is IK3, known to the world as the Polar Owl, a name that evokes both the stark beauty and unforgiving nature of its location. It is a place where temperatures plummet to -50 degrees Celsius, where the sun barely rises for months on end, and where hope itself seems to freeze in the air. But the Polar Owl is more than just a prison, it is a testament to human cruelty, a place where the Russian state sends its enemies to be broken by the cold, by isolation, and by despair. This is not a place for rehabilitation, it is a place for punishment, for the systematic dehumanization of those deemed enemies of the state. Here, political prisoners like Alexei Navalny, alongside hardened criminals, endure conditions that test the very limits of human endurance. In this frozen wasteland, survival becomes a daily struggle. The cold seeps into your bones, numbing your body and crushing your spirit. The isolation is absolute, a suffocating blanket of silence broken only by the howling wind and the whispers of madness. This is the story of the Polar Owl, a place where even time itself seems to stand still, and where the human spirit is pushed to the brink of oblivion. The Polar Owl is not just a physical location, it is a psychological torment, a place where the mind is as frozen as the landscape. The prisoners here are subjected to a relentless regime of isolation, with minimal human contact, designed to break their will and spirit. The guards, often as hardened as the environment itself, enforce a strict code of silence and obedience. Any form of dissent is met with swift and brutal punishment. The prison's architecture, with its cold gray walls and narrow barred windows, adds to the sense of hopelessness. The cells are small and bare, offering no comfort or respite from the biting cold. The prisoners are given just enough food to survive, but never enough to feel satiated. Medical care is minimal, and many suffer from untreated illnesses and injuries. The Polar Owl is a place where humanity is stripped away layer by layer until nothing remains but a shell of a person. It is a stark reminder of the lengths to which a state will go to maintain control and silence dissent. The story of the Polar Owl is a chilling testament to the enduring power of the human spirit, even in the face of unimaginable adversity. To comprehend the reality of the Polar Owl, one must first grasp the sheer brutality of its environment. This is a place where survival is a daily battle, a test of endurance against the elements. Located in Yamalo-Nenets Autonomous Okrug, far beyond the Arctic Circle, the region experiences some of the harshest weather conditions on Earth. The Arctic winds whip across the barren landscape, creating a desolate and unforgiving environment. Temperatures regularly drop to -50 degrees Celsius, and for months on end the sun remains a distant memory, casting the landscape in perpetual twilight. The lack of sunlight affects not just the physical world but also the mental state of those who live here. The cold is not an abstract concept here, it is a constant, visceral presence, a relentless assault on the human body. Every breath taken feels like inhaling shards of glass, and the cold seeps into the bones, making every movement a challenge. Exposed skin can freeze in minutes, leading to frostbite and in extreme cases, amputation. The risk of hypothermia is ever present, and the body must work overtime to maintain its core temperature. The air itself is painful to breathe, and even the simple act of walking can be a treacherous endeavor on the icy ground. The wind cuts through layers of clothing, and the ice underfoot makes every step a potential hazard. For the inmates of the Polar Owl, the cold is more than just an environmental hazard. It is a weapon wielded by their captors. The prison's design and location are deliberate, using the harsh climate as an additional layer of punishment. Prisoners are subjected to collective punishment, forced to stand outside in the freezing temperatures for hours on end, their thin prison garb offering little protection from the elements. The cold becomes a tool of control, breaking down both body and spirit. The guards, bundled in thick winter clothing, watch impassively as the inmates shiver uncontrollably, their breath forming plumes of vapor in the frigid air. The stark contrast between the guards' warmth and the prisoners' suffering highlights the cruelty of this environment. While the Arctic climate poses a constant threat to physical survival, the true battle is fought within the mind. The relentless cold and isolation are just the beginning. It is the psychological torment inflicted within the walls of the Polar Owl that truly defines its cruelty. The prison is a labyrinth of despair, where every corner hides a new form of mental anguish. The prison employs a sophisticated system of psychological manipulation designed to break the spirit and crush any semblance of resistance. Guards are trained to exploit the vulnerabilities of inmates, using fear and uncertainty as their primary tools. Isolation is perhaps the most insidious weapon in the prison's arsenal. Inmates are often left alone for days, weeks, or even months with no human contact, driving them to the brink of madness. Inmates are kept in overcrowded cells, often with violent and unstable cellmates, fostering an atmosphere of constant tension and fear. The lack of personal space and privacy only adds to the stress, making every moment a struggle for mental stability. The threat of violence, both from fellow prisoners and guards, hangs heavy in the air. This ever-present danger keeps inmates in a perpetual state of anxiety, never knowing when the next attack might come. For those deemed particularly troublesome, there is solitary confinement in the shizo, a place where the mind is left to unravel in the silence. A brutal form of isolation where prisoners are kept in cramped, unheated cells with minimal human contact. The cold seeps into their bones and the lack of interaction gnaws at their sanity. The darkness is absolute, broken only by the dim glow of a single light bulb. This faint light serves as a cruel reminder of the outside world, a world that seems increasingly distant and unattainable. The silence is deafening, punctuated only by the drip, drip, drip of water from a leaky pipe. This monotonous sound becomes a form of torture, a constant reminder of their entrapment. The psychological pressure is relentless. Every aspect of the prison environment is designed to break down the inmates' mental defenses, leaving them vulnerable and hopeless. Inmates are subjected to sleep deprivation, constant noise, and extreme temperature fluctuations, all designed to disorient and break their will. The lack of rest and comfort erodes their mental resilience, making it harder to cope with the daily horrors. The cumulative effect of these tactics is devastating, leading to anxiety, depression, paranoia, and even psychosis. The human mind can only endure so much before it begins to fracture, and the polar owl is a master at pushing inmates to that breaking point. The polar owl's cruelty extends beyond psychological manipulation to encompass systematic physical abuse and a callous disregard for the well-being of its inmates. Torture is not an aberration. It is an integral part of the prison's regime, used to punish, intimidate, and extract confessions. Reports from former inmates and human rights organizations paint a grim picture of the methods employed. Beatings are commonplace, often administered with clubs, batons, or simply fists. Electric shocks, stress positions, and prolonged exposure to freezing temperatures are also frequently reported. Adding to the inmates' suffering is the woefully inadequate medical care. The prison's remote location makes it difficult to attract qualified medical personnel, and those who do work there are often unwilling or unable to provide adequate care. Prisoners report being denied basic medical treatment for injuries and illnesses, and complaints about medical neglect are commonplace. The prison pharmacy is chronically understocked, and essential medications are often unavailable. Prisoners with chronic conditions, such as diabetes or heart disease, are particularly vulnerable, as they are often unable to receive the specialized care they need. The case of Alexei Navalny, the prominent Russian opposition leader, stands as a chilling testament to the brutal realities of the polar owl. Sentenced to the prison in 2021 on trumped-up charges, Navalny endured a relentless campaign of psychological and physical torture during his time there. He was subjected to repeated stints in solitary confinement, denied access to his lawyers and family, and deprived of basic medical care for a range of health problems. Navalny's health deteriorated rapidly under the harsh conditions, and he staged numerous hunger strikes to protest his treatment and that of other political prisoners. Despite international pressure for his release and growing concerns about his deteriorating health, the Russian authorities remained unmoved. In February 2024, after a suspicious illness and a brief loss of consciousness, Alexei Navalny died in prison. His death, widely believed to be the result of poisoning and medical neglect, sent shockwaves around the world and served as a stark reminder of the human cost of the Kremlin's repression. The polar owl's history is intertwined with the darkest chapters of Russia's past. The prison was established in 1961 on the site of a former Gulag camp, one of the many forced labor camps that dotted the Soviet landscape during the Stalinist era. Millions of people were sent to these camps, accused of political crimes or simply deemed enemies of the state. The gulags were places of unimaginable suffering, where prisoners were worked to death, tortured, and executed without mercy. While the polar owl is not a gulag in the strictest sense, It shares many of the same characteristics: its remote location, its harsh conditions, and its use as a tool for political repression. Human rights organizations have documented numerous cases of torture, ill treatment, and extrajudicial killings at the Polar Owl. Prisoners are denied basic due process rights, and access to legal counsel is often restricted or denied altogether. The prison operates with near impunity, its remote location, and the Russian government's tight control over information making it difficult to hold perpetrators accountable.